From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Wildcast podcast, starting your week off, recapping the Arizona-Washington State game. And we'll look a little bit ahead to the Territorial Cup showdown on Friday as the Wildcats have their season finale this week against the Arizona State Sun Devils. It is officially Territorial Cup week. Sunday was Sparky's birthday, Lev. November 20th was Sparky's birthday. And to celebrate Sparky's birthday, some Arizona fans went up to Tempe and painted the A Mountain next to the Sun Devil Stadium with a little bit of blue and a little bit of cardinal red. So the hijinks has already started for the rivalry this week. And the Wildcats looking to snap a 5-game losing streak to their rival. They haven't won since 2016. Arizona enters this game as a 4-point favorite. First time the Wildcats have been favored to win the Territorial Cup since 2017. So it's been a little while since the Wildcats have been in position to win the Territorial Cup. Big week this week. But Lev, disappointing game for the Arizona Wildcats on Saturday.
Is that why they weren't at the Arizona Stadium on Saturday? Because they were up at Tempe?
Yeah,
painting the rock.
It was them.
Yeah, I thought our colleague Greg Hansen had a good point about the game, that it was kind of disappointing, the crowd. I think we got the sense that it was going to be that way all week long because of how much campaigning Jed Fish was doing to get people to come. But I think he kind of knew it was going to be flat, and it was. There was not really a lot of buzz in the building. Arizona Wildcats had to generate their own energy.
But you have to bring the juice after a big win against UCLA, right?
It's not an excuse. And I don't think that facing your old team and whatever baggage comes with that is an excuse. I don't think that the week before the Territorial Cup should be an excuse, because it's the week before the Apple Cup too. And Washington State had nothing to play for in this game, and they were the more focused, sharper team, especially in the first half of the game. It was really strange to see so many situations where Jayden de Laura and his receivers weren't on the same page multiple times in this game. One of them led to a shoving incident on the sideline.
Yeah.
Two of them led to interceptions. For that to happen in the 11th game of the season, really disappointing, inexplicable. You could tell, I think, after the game, too, Jed was a little more frustrated than he usually is, because that's his baby, The offense is his thing.
Oh, I hear talking about Jayden.
About Jayden specifically?
That's his baby. Sorry.
Oh, no. Well, that's his apprentice at this point. He's basically in charge of the offense, and he coaches the quarterbacks and the wide receivers more than any other positions. And they had an off game. I don't think they'll have an off game this week.
Yeah.
And the one really encouraging thing about Jayden de Laura's performances this season, has not had 2 bad games in a row. He typically bounces back really strong, and they're going to need him to do that this week. Going to need to be at their best. Arizona State, I think, definitely had a little bit of that look-ahead thing going on last week, but they will come bring the intensity up to Tucson on Friday afternoon for sure.
I know Oregon State is a really good team this year, but look how they smacked ASU this week in Tempe. So if you're
dismantled them,
if you're an Arizona fan, you have to be feeling pretty good about your chances for this week against the Sun Devils. But Lev, going back to Jayden de Laura, I will say this: the more I thought about it, the more I was kind of disappointed in how he handled himself in that game, because we knew when we asked him after the UCLA game about facing his former team. And the adrenaline was pumping through his veins because he just beat UCLA. He's about to face the team that he left to go play at Arizona. And we knew that Washington State was going to use that as bulletin board material, because he said, hey, just watch. This game is personal. So you knew that Jayden de Laura was going to come in fired up for this game. And I was really worried at that moment, like, man, how is Jayden going to look if he has a bad game? And, he not only did he throw a career-high 4 interceptions, but getting into that skirmish with Dorian Singer. And I looked back and checked it, Lev. Jayden was the one who initiated the contact first. And Dorian was just kind of defending himself like, hey, you don't put your hands on me. For Jayden de Laura to do that against Washington State and show the rest of the world, these are my emotions. I can't really handle myself in this big moment. It leaves me kind of concerned for Arizona, because if the Wildcats want to get to where Jedd Fisch wants this program to go, can you really maybe trust Jayden de Laura to handle himself totally in that big moment? I mean, he did it against UCLA. I mean, they went on the road and they beat the Bruins. Like, that was a big moment for Jayden. But then the following week, he couldn't duplicate that, and that's a little concerning for me.
Yeah, I think that, it might be a good idea for Jayden to work on himself a little in the offseason, like maybe see one of the sports psychologists or psychiatrists. I'm not sure which one. It's one of those two.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to know the difference, but just to kind of like, hey, how can I handle situations like this a little bit better? How can I be a little more even keel? Because you kind of have to be when you're in that position. There's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of responsibility.
Well, and you could do
there's a lot going on.
You could do certain techniques in that moment to kind of set yourself back and say, okay, let me think first before I act. Not going back to, but I watched the Malice at the Palace documentary on Netflix, and Ron Artest said when he got in that situation with Ben Wallace, the first thing he did was take 5. He said he was seeing a therapist, and that therapist advised him, if you ever get into a situation where you're about to get into a fight, take 5. Take 5 seconds to just breathe, relax a little bit, and then Ron Artest took 5 and laid on the scores table. Ben Wallace didn't like that a lot, but that initiated the Malice at the Palace. But something like that where you're in a situation, and rather than allowing your emotions to get the best of you, to just kind of settle down and be even-keeled.
Yeah, and it's tough because, number one, Jayden's 20, 21 years old, or however old he is. So he's still young. He's learning, as we all are. And number two, he plays with a lot of passion. That's kind of like what makes him special on the field. So it's a really difficult and delicate balance. Hopefully he will use this last week as a learning experience, and he'll be better prepared for the next time something like that comes up. And I think this week might be that time, because it's always super emotional. There's a lot of intensity. Remember, there was an incident before the game last year. Guys were scuffing up the end zone up in Tempe, and I don't know, there may have been some sort of incident with a groundskeeper. Stuff happens all the time. I mean, you gotta have your phone out during pregame, watching every little thing that happens. So yeah, it was discouraging, but it's not like it's something that can't be overcome. Like I said, he's young. He's done a really good job this year of he wasn't running earlier in the year, and then he saw it on film, and then he started running, or he was forcing the ball into coverage, and then he kind of stopped doing that, or he wasn't taking the checkdowns, and then he was. So I think he's really good at self-examination and learning from his mistakes, and hopefully he'll be able to do that with a quick turnaround this week. Now, the thing that was positive to come out of that game was the defense.
Yes, absolutely.
Not only did they have 8 tackles for losses in that game, which was a season high, they had 7 tackles for no gain, and 8 if you count a play on which Washington State was called for holding. Russell Davis, the second, Deuce Davis, drew that holding penalty with a really nice little inside move on an offensive lineman. So I like the way the defense is trending right now. It's going to be all about stopping the run against Arizona State. Xavier Valade is far and away their best offensive weapon, number 2 in the Pac-12 in rushing. He played here, Justin, a couple years ago with Wyoming in the Arizona Bowl.
Okay.
Was offensive MVP of the game with 204 rushing yards. So he's experienced success on this very field, not exactly the same turf because they've replaced the turf, but in this building, right? So I think that's going to be the focal point for an improving defense. I love the way the safeties played in that game, super aggressive. Gunnar Maldonado was playing downhill. Isaiah Taylor was playing downhill. We continue to see positive signs from the young defensive ends like Russell Davis and Isaiah Ward. Good. I'd feel pretty good about the future if I were an Arizona fan right now. But, of course, all their focus is going to be on Friday.
Absolutely.
And what happens in that game. And that will really shape the narrative for the offseason.
Yeah, because what happens if Jayden plays bad on Friday and Arizona ends up losing the game against ASU? Do you go into the offseason opening up the quarterback competition and saying, hey, we got this young Noah Fafita on our bench right now. Oh, by the way, we also have this 6'5" gunslinger from Colorado coming in too. I'm not expecting Braden Norman to compete for the starting job really, but I mean, if Jayden struggles on Friday, you have to think it's not his job, right, going into next season?
It's interesting because he's had such a good year. I mean, he's thrown for like 3,500 yards.
And if this was
25 touchdowns.
And if this was last year, Jayden could possibly make an argument for like an all Pac-12 selection. But since the quarterback play is just so elite this year, he kind of is in that middle of the pack when it comes to the quarterbacks in the conference.
Yeah, I don't think we should overreact to one bad game under a specific set of circumstances.
Yeah.
Like you say, if he has 2 bad games in a row to end the season and they lose against ASU, then maybe you have to revisit things a little bit. I don't know how Jed is going to handle that in the offseason. Is he just going to say Jayden is our starting quarterback and, Noah and Braden Dorman are competing for the number 2 spot? I don't think you want to phrase it that way to those young guys. The way they've handled it so far is, hey, you just keep doing, stacking one good day on top of another, one good practice on top of another, play your best football and just kind of see what happens. I'm a fan of Noah Fafita, at least what I've seen so far. I think he's very capable, and I think from a kind of a mental makeup standpoint, he has exhibited like what you want to see from a quarterback since he's been here anyway. Like no situation that he's been put in has been too overwhelming for him. Now,
it's kind of like pick your poison.
When he's come in the game, though, the games have basically been over.
Yeah.
Like if let's just say Jayden got hurt midway through the second quarter, and it was a 13-13 game or something at the time, and it was on Noah Fafita to win the Territorial Cup, then that's a real test to see how mature you are and how if you can handle a situation like that. So hopefully that won't happen. I don't think it will happen. I'm pretty confident that Jayden is going to come back and be really sharp, and that he will huddle with his receivers, and they will just kind of figure things out this week.
All right, Lev, let's go to the mailbag. Lots of questions submitted this week, and a lot of them are regarding the defense. So let's go to our first question from the Dude 1121. His question is, where is Paris Shand? Who is Isaiah Taylor replacing when he is getting snaps? So Paris Shand is one of Arizona's consistent defensive tackles, been a key part of the rotation all season long. Jetfish said that he's out for medical reasons. We don't know what those medical reasons are.
Yeah, we kind of do, I think. I mean, he and Deion Wilson and Sterling Lane were all out this last week, and Jed made reference to them having to follow protocols. So I think we can kind of put 2 and 2 together here. I don't want to assume anything. I don't want to, quote unquote, report something we don't know. But I think we can kind of figure out what that is. Something that has affected the world a bunch over the last 2 years. So hopefully those guys will be back. He said that hopefully 2 of the 3 will be back and available for this game. You can never have enough defensive linemen. Regarding Isaiah Taylor, sometimes he's been coming in for Jackson Turner at free safety, and sometimes he's just been part of the dollar package, where they're playing 7 defensive backs. And he's able in that position to be really aggressive and stick his nose in there against the run, and I think that's where he's at his best. I know that he's been the backup at the free safety spot, which is traditionally kind of a center field position, but I like when Isaiah Taylor is attacking the line of scrimmage, and he did a really good job of that this last week.
He had a couple of TFLs, right, or just one?
I think 1 or 1.5.
Okay.
But those guys were, they were,
everywhere.
After a while, they were all over the bubble screens.
Yeah.
Like all over it. I was really expecting some kind of slant and go or something from Washington State. They tried a few fade balls during that game, but Arizona had good coverage.
I was impressed with Gunnar Maldonado.
Yeah, Gunnar had a really good game. Traden Stukes had a really good game. Takario Davis covered really well in that game. So secondary's coming around.
All right, our next question is from MPAS Arizona, and they ask if, given the opportunity, could Jed Lasso hit the throttle and try and score 50+? I'm assuming he's talking about 50+ thousand people, or
I think points.
Points? Well, how about 50,000 people at Arizona Stadium?
How about 50,000 people and 50+ points?
Yeah, I like that.
I mean,
I think they're gonna do both. Or I wouldn't say 50+ points. I think if Arizona's going to win this game, a lot of emotions go into a rivalry game. I think it's going to be high scoring, but I would say probably first 1 to 40 wins. I would say Arizona probably score in the high 30s in this game.
I guess what he's asking is, like, if given the opportunity, would Jed kind of run up the score a little bit? And I think he would.
Oh, against
honestly.
ASU?
Yeah, I think
totally.
he would. We kind of saw that a little bit against Colorado, where he was keeping guys in, maybe to try to get some records or whatnot. I mean, there is a scenario in my mind where that could happen this week, where they could blow out ASU.
Have it all come full circle from 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to predict that, I don't think, because there's still a little bit of lingering kind of distrust of Arizona's run defense. You know, I could easily see Xavier Valade, whom we referenced earlier, going for $150 or $175, and that being a big problem for them. Tucson's very own
Trenton
Bourguet, expected to start at quarterback, and he's had some really good games. But could they score 50? Yeah, they could also give up like 45.
Yeah.
So.
His other question was, who's been the player left over from someone that's been the most disappointing? I would say,
man, that's tough. That's really tough. Okay,
Christian Roland Wallace. Do I dare say him?
Disappointing?
Like I mean, he's been
no, not at all.
Well, he hasn't been bad, but I expected him to play a little bit better. He's been really good in coverage, doesn't have any interceptions.
The only flaw on his resume is the lack of interceptions. But as far as like just being a shutdown corner, he's been really good this year.
Yeah.
That would not be the guy I would cite. Maybe Peyton Fears, someone who just like he's okay. He just hasn't gotten that much better, and he's just struggled with edge rushers. I've thought for a long time that he should have been a guard. And maybe Josh Donovan should have played outside. They could have flip-flopped those guys. Or last year they could have flip-flopped him and Donovan Lay, or could have flip-flopped him and Jonas Avainea, who will be interesting to see what they do with him in the offseason, whether they give him a look at right or left tackle. I think that's definitely a possibility. That's one person that comes to mind. Like, I don't think Christian Young has had a great season this year. I've been a little disappointed in his play. Tackling has not been great. Hasn't made a lot of big plays. He's playing a different role than last year. It seemed like that Viper position was just perfect for him, and covering tight ends. He did that really well, and hasn't. I don't know. I thought he'd kind of take it up another level this year.
I never considered him just because he was recruited by Rich Rod, and then came right when someone started.
Yeah, well, that's still a someone
leftover
player, I guess. I don't know exactly what our Twitter followers asking as far as like guys that someone brought in or just guys who were here during that time, but those are a couple names that spring to mind.
I tell you what, the one who's impressed me the most, Lev, Michael Wiley.
Oh man, I know.
Michael Wiley, 100%.
Like, I feel like he's exceeded all expectations. Like they brought in new running backs. They had this deep running back room. He just rose to the top, kept that position, and he's really good. And it's like subtle. He's just kind of smooth. I was saying, I wrote this last week, like he's not the fastest. He's not the biggest, but he's the best.
It's not sexy, but it gets the job done. Because what is your job at the end of the day for a running back?
Hang on to the ball, catch the ball, protect the passer.
And get in the end zone.
Yeah.
And he does all of those things.
He does. He really does.
All right. AZ Cat John asks, why does he feel the need to get cute on fourth down? And I feel like he's talking about.
Yeah, I know what he's talking about.
Is he talking about Jed or Jayden?
He's talking about Jed.
Okay.
Yeah, he's talking about the trick play.
Okay. A QB throwback and a double reverse. Garbage in key spots. I kind of agree with AZ Cat John because in that play, they decided to install Jamari Joyner. And I feel bad for Jabari because Jamari, I feel like, is just put in at the most crucial spots in games. And it's just put in very sticky situations to where he can't really do what he's supposed to do. So putting Jamari in that particular moment, I wasn't a big fan of it. But, hey, you know what? If they ended up picking up a first down, Jed looks like a genius. But they didn't, so now he has a lot of people questioning his play calling.
Yeah, it's like, do you run that play on 4th and 2? Or do you run that play on 1st and 10? You know
First
what I
and
mean?
10.
Yeah. It's like, this is a crucial moment in the game. I just, no coach is perfect. I think that was a bad call at that time. The play got totally blown up by penetration to the point that, like, Wiley kept the ball. Jamari looked like just kind of gave up on it. Like, he was like, oh, man, this is not happening. There's too many guys in the vicinity. I think Jayden de Laura was supposed to catch the pass, and he was wide open, but they could never get it off.
Yeah.
So I just think it was a cool play that I wouldn't have minded seeing at a different juncture in the game.
Rick Patton asks, what's the answer for the quarterback contain that Washington State employed against Jayden last week? Seems like the times he was able to escape pocket pressure, he had a spy on him and couldn't run, but also couldn't find the open guy.
Yeah, my solution, run the damn ball.
We talked about Michael Wiley, right?
Yeah, get Washington State out of that mode where they're playing all these tricks on the quarterback. They have a very deceptive defensive front. They bring up 6-7 guys. You know, they put the linebackers in the gaps, and then you don't know who's coming. Like, a lot of times I'd see one linebacker would come, one linebacker would drop, a defensive lineman would drop, and a nickel would rush. So there was a lot going on there. I guess that's a zone blitz. I think that's what they were called back in the day when the Steelers first started doing that, like in the early or in the 90s and 2000s. So how do you get him out of that mode? To me, you run the ball.
Yeah.
Justin, they had 22 rushes in this game, tied for a season low.
46 pass attempts from Jayden de Laura,
tied for a season low. And now, but those rushes include sacks. They include that Wiley play that we just talked about that was supposed to be a pass. They include scrambles. Running backs had 16 carries in that game. And you could argue, okay, they were losing, they had to pass. Well, if you thought the game was that far out of reach, then why are you punting from your own 46 with like 9 minutes left in the third quarter on 4th and 4? Obviously, you still think at that point in the game, there's enough time for us to have enough possessions to come back and win the game, right? So it was not too soon to abandon the run. Yeah. I don't know. Like, we've talked about it many times. I totally get it. They have great receivers. They have a productive quarterback. They have 2,000-yard receivers on this team and a 700-yard freshman. Of course, you want to feed those guys the ball, but I just feel like they could have made things so much easier for Jayden in that game by establishing the run and being really physical. You don't have to pass it 45 times. You can pass it 35 times and run it 30 and just have a little bit more balance. And maybe that's an antiquated notion, and maybe Jed would say that you guys are wrong. This is not how it's done. Look at all the success that we've had. But I just feel like it sets a tone, and it can also kind of wear down the opponent by the fourth quarter. I always go back to this, Justin. You were an offensive lineman
downhill
in high school. But if you do that for 3 quarters, those defensive linemen, they might tap out by the time you get to the fourth. And we've definitely seen that in past territorial cup games on both sides.
Yeah, time of possession and taking care of the ball, I thought was going to be critical in this game, and Arizona didn't really do either of those. And especially in an emotional game for Jayden de Laura, you want your quarterback to be settled. You want him to make easy throws early on, but you also want to kind of just show off your dominance, right? You want to just punch him in the face early on. You want to win that first round because it's a boxing match. You want to win that first round. You want to be aggressive, as aggressive as you can. And Arizona was just passing, and they didn't really run the football. We hear about all these great running backs that they have. Michael Wiley was solid in that game. DJ Williams, he didn't get his first carry until, the second half?
He had 1 carry for 0 yards.
Both
Michael Wiley and Jonah Coleman averaged over 7 yards a carry in that game.
Yeah.
I will add one more thing. New left tackle. Plus a freshman left guard playing next to him, making his, third career start. Again, make it easy on those guys. Run the ball.
Yeah.
Let them get settled in. Let them exert their physicality a little bit before you resort to the pass. In the first quarter, I wrote this in my 5 takeaways. They had 9 passing plays and 6 rushing plays, but 3 of the rushing plays were the trick play, a sack, and a Jayden scramble. So 12 out of the first 15 were passing plays, the quote-unquote scripted plays. And it might have even gone deeper than that. Michael Wiley had 2 rushes in the first quarter. One of them was for 25 yards.
Wow.
I don't know why you wouldn't go back to that. And again, no play caller is perfect. Jed has had, I think, a lot more really good games this year than games like that one. So maybe he will have a little bit of self-reflection and self-examination and figure out that, hey, maybe we need to run the rock a little bit more in this game on Friday.
Ain't that the truth? And speaking of the truth, Paul Pierce asks, not the Paul Pierce.
Do we know if it's the Paul Pierce? It could be. Does he have a blue check mark?
He does not have a blue.
Did he pay the $8?
He does not. He does not subscribe to Twitter Blue. But this Paul Pierce at PM Pause 65, the truth too, we'll call him that. He asks, how much of a pass rush effectiveness is DL skill versus scheme? I feel like skill set is overstated. Our guy beating their guy. Other teams get more free runners at JDL than we are getting. They haven't beaten anyone. Just coming from somewhere we didn't expect. Thoughts?
I think it's a very astute observation.
Yeah.
On the part of Paul Pierce. And I think it's both. Okay. Now, Washington State was really good, like I said, at disguising their looks. Like, you couldn't tell who was coming, and then oftentimes it would be this nickelback coming out of nowhere, and that guy would come in free. It happened on the interception where Jayden de Laura threw hot because, this guy came rushing right at him, and the left tackle, who was Sam Lange, blocked down instead of flaring out to pick him up. So there's obviously some kind of a breakdown there. They didn't see what was coming. But the best defense that you can have, Justin, is a 4-man rush where you're winning and you're able to keep 7 guys in coverage. So you want to be able to teach those skills, bring in guys who can win those one-on-one battles so you don't have to blitz. It's like, I go back to like when the Giants gave Tom Brady the most trouble in the Super Bowl of anybody, right? How'd they do it? 4-man rush.
Great defensive line play.
Yeah, great defensive line play. And hey, Jacob Kungaika, Tai Yungalale, Russell Davis, Isaiah Ward, Sterling Lane. Hey, if those guys can all add 20 pounds in the offseason, add moves to their games, that's a really nice foundation for a pretty good defensive line. And that's where it all starts. That's what you have to have to really play the best kind of defense.
All right, Joseph52. Joe's a consistent mailbag question asker. We appreciate you, Joe. He asked, could living and dying with his starters be a weakness of Jed, whether that be the middle linebacker at the beginning of the season or now even the left tackle position, where it seems like he is refusing to try any and all option. Each time he has got fresh blood in there, it seems to have worked. That's the thing, though, is like at middle linebacker, who else could you put in there besides maybe Amon Allen, Malik Reed?
You could play Amon Allen a little bit more. They've played a lot of other young guys. We're not privy to their meetings, or we don't watch all of their in-season practices to see how all that's going. But I think that middle linebacker, there's a lot of responsibilities, mental responsibilities beyond just the physical part of it.
And I think they know that they can get by with Jerry Roberts.
Yeah, and look, when they go to the dollar package, Jerry Roberts comes off the field. Manu is the one linebacker that they have out there. So they obviously trust him. Middle linebacker is a position they're going to address, I'm pretty sure, in the portal, and it would not surprise me at all if they brought in two guys to vie for that spot who have some experience playing high-level college ball. Okay, so on defense, they've subbed plenty lately. It took about 2/3 of the season for them to get to that point. I think Jed encouraged Johnny Nansen to do that. So Jed, I think, was the one who was maybe driving that a little bit. Wide receiver, they've barely subbed. I mean, those guys have played a ton of snaps this year, but they're all really good.
Yeah.
And they don't ever seem to get tired. I feel like, I could be wrong about this, but the play with the interception that was thrown to Tanner McLaughlin, I think came right after that crazy play where Jayden was 4th and 13, and Jayden ran around and got hit, threw it to Tanner. Tanner broke a tackle.
Yeah.
Tanner hurdled a guy. I'm pretty sure it was the next play. And if you watch it, it kind of looked like Tanner was tired. He was running up the seam and he was just like, I'm not going to get the ball. I'm just going to kind of, ease up here a little bit. Do you play your best guys? Are there situations where you sub? To me, it's like you don't want to take Dorian Singer and Jacob Cowing and Territo McMillan off the field, do you?
No.
Running back, they've subbed pretty liberally. A lot of guys have played. Jonah Coleman's gotten plenty of snaps. DJ Williams, for the most part, has played. Left tackle, I don't know. It's like, you're going to make a change for the last game of the season.
Yeah.
And then if you do that, then you're like, Josh Donovan, if he went in, he's playing a position he's really never played before. And then you mess up that rotation you've got going at left guard. I just think it's kind of too late for that spot.
And left tackle and middle linebacker, those are two positions for Arizona where they are just so thin, right? And if Jerry Roberts goes down, if anybody goes down at left tackle, whether it's Sam Longy or Josh Donovan, that's problematic for the Arizona Wildcats.
Do you remember who played middle linebacker in last year's Territorial Cup?
Oh, man. Was it Rasheed Hodge?
No, it was Anthony Pandy.
Anthony Pandy.
Remember, because Jerry Roberts got hurt in the Washington State game.
Yeah.
So what they did was they moved Pandy to middle backer, and they started Malik Reed at weak side linebacker. And that, of course, led us to think that Malik Reed was going to be the starting weak side linebacker this year, and he has not played a single snap.
Wow.
For reasons unknown.
Wow. All right, our last mailbag question comes from Pops McTweederson.
Is this the last mailbag question of the year, Justin, or are we going to do this next week?
We'll do an off-season one.
Yeah,
Get ready for the 2023 season.
Yeah, that's a good call.
The burning questions from Arizona football fans for 2023. But our last one for the Territorial Cup week comes from Pops McTweederson, and Pops asks, we want to know.
This is the real Pops McTweederson. Has he been verified?
I got to check. Oh, man. Yes, we want to know if Arizona wins, what will the contract extension be for Coach Fish? Will his staff receive any raises to help retain the coaches? If the Wildcats lose, does the coach still get a smaller boost? I don't think the results of this game is going to matter with Jed Fish's contract, but as it relates to his staff, I will say this: in college football, it's a carousel. Coaches are constantly on the move. Jobs open up. And unfortunately, for Arizona fans, there are a lot of jobs that are better in college football than coaching in Tucson, Arizona. And I think if they're going to have to maybe, hold off or fend off other schools from poaching some of their coaches, I would say probably their number one guy is Kevin Cummings, their wide receivers coach. Just because you look at the resume in which he's built over the last couple of years, Arizona is one of the top receiving teams in the Pac-12. They have one of the best receiving cores in the Pac-12, and he's shown that he can recruit at a high level. He got a guy like Jacob Cowing out of the portal and was able to get T-Mac. Granted, I know the Oregon coaching staff got fired, but still, players, they go to certain schools based on the relationship with their position coach, and to get a relationship with a guy like a T-Mac really shows the prowess of Kevin Cummings. So he's the only guy that I'd be worried about leaving if I'm an Arizona fan.
So I think that Jedd Fisch will get a contract extension after this season. I'm not sure when it will be announced or what the exact terms will be, but usually in these situations, you get an extra year added on and a slight pay increase. But I think, from what we know of him, that it would be more important for him to retain his staff, at least the guys that he wants to retain, than to get a pay increase or some big contract like a lot of the other head coaches have gotten.
And like there are some coaches, like you're not worried that they're going to leave. Like there are some guys who are just lifers, like Dwayne Walker, right? Brandon Carroll like might go back to the NFL or something like that. I don't know, but I would like to think that Johnny Nansen, Brendan Carroll, Dwayne Walker, Chuck Cecil, Ricky Hundley, like all those guys are set. They're not going anywhere. Yeah,
I think that's true. I think Cummings, like you mentioned, is maybe kind of the hottest candidate for a job, and it would just really be like he'd make more money somewhere else. So I think that the conversations that Jedd is having with Dave Heeke are probably like, hey, you got to take care of my guys. I don't want to lose. I would not want to lose Kevin Cummings. Not only is he coached that position really well, but he's a really good recruiter.
Yeah.
So I would definitely expect there to be an announcement of some sort, maybe early next week or something regarding a contract extension for Jedd. And then, then we're in December, and it's going to be portal activity, coaching carousel, all the usual offseason craziness that we have come to know and love about college football.
Yes, sir. All right, that'll do it for this early week edition of the Wildcast podcast. We'll be back in a couple of days for a pre-Territorial Cup podcast with sports editor of the Star, Ryan Finley. We'll preview that game and also have our Pac-12 picks for the week. And, of course, talk about Thanksgiving.
Do we have to do Pac-12 picks?
I think we should just crown Ryan Finley.
So bad.
Yeah, we should have our
ceremony.
It
was so bad. I was like my only chance to get back in the race this last week, and it was a disaster.
I think the next episode is going to be a victory lap for Mr. Ryan Finley for winning the Pac-12 picks against the spread. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Wildcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out Arizona Wildcats football coverage for Territorial Cup Week on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app.